So on today's episode, we're going to find out what it takes to guide an audience to know, like, and trust your brand in the Facebook advertising ecosystem using the brand-driven methodology by Depesh Mandalia. Stay tuned because you don't want to miss this episode. Hi guys, it's Kunle and welcome to today's episode. The interview you're about to listen to is an interview I had with Depesh Mandalia. Now, if you don't know who Depesh Mandalia is, he is arguably the UK's #1 Facebook ads trainer and expert, in the UK, and one of the top in the world. Now, if this is the third time he's been on the show, the very first time he came on the show was back in 2015 at the early days of this episode. And at the time, he was a performance marketer in-house for a brand called Lost My Name. I think they're now rebranded as Wonderberry or something like that. They were a personalized book. And Depesh, along with the team of graphic designers and marketers, copywriters, was able to figure out the hidden potential behind Facebook advertising at the time. He was one of the early, Facebook ad experts that Facebook recognized in the UK, flew out to the United States just due to the results we were able to garner. At the time we brought him in, these guys were over 10 figures, and he went on to take them well over $25 million at the time. And then after his stint there, he decided to become a consultant, essentially. And as a consultant, he matured over to becoming an agency. And right now, he does two things, essentially. He runs a Facebook group. Not only running that Facebook group, he has a training program. More about that. It's called the BPM method, and he also has an agency for brands that can work directly with him. He works on various niches, which are like lead generation, e-commerce, and online courses. Essentially, those are like the three major pillars he offers consulting for. Anyway, he knows his stuff. The second time I brought him in was last year, where he was talking about Q4, how to rev it up. That episode was the most popular, I think, episode for last year. One of the most popular episodes on this podcast last year. I'm bringing him on today to talk about the new and improved BPM method. So he managed to get a lot of feedback, user feedback from people who joined the course, and he has essentially refined it. He's doubled or tripled the content in it, and he has also catered for various various other sort of scenarios. At the time, it was very e-commerce focused. He's expanded the content. And I think the last time I learned, he mentioned, he said it has a score, a customer feedback score of about 7, which is really, really good. So it's a brilliant episode. We spoke for over an hour and a half in this episode, and we were just talking. He was just shedding a lot about why now is the time to really focus on a brand oriented narrative, in all of your Facebook advertising, where you have to know, like, and trust. You have to build all that knowledge at the top of the funnel, build likability and trustability, at the bottom of the funnel, in order for people to purchase from you. And why, all of the audiences you're targeting should be very brand oriented. We not only talk about brand, we talk about how he structures his campaigns, because he's also the author of a book called the CBO Cookbook. And that's done terrifically well. It's like a $99 type, book, but it's done terrifically well because he was able to, figure out quite early on how to work with Facebook's Facebook's, CBO, which is the campaign budget optimized, setup essentially. So in essence, this is full of juice. This is really, really, really good stuff. And he's given everybody who listens to this episode 25% off the BPM method. So typically the BPM method course is about $2,000. And if you're listening to this episode on the podcast, check out the show notes. There is a link, a very specific link for this podcast where it's $1,600 from $2,000, so wiping out 25% off essentially. Also, if you're on the YouTube channel, if you're watching this on YouTube, just check the description. There's a link to the discounts is given, listeners in this podcast. Listen to our conversation first before you make any decisions, essentially, and you'd understand why this is the ish if you are looking to learn properly about Facebook advertising. And this is like high level training for you, for your team, to really smash it for the rest of the year, this 2020. So I would get the ball rolling. Remember our sponsors. We've got we've got 3 sponsors now. We've got the best backup solution providers essentially in Shopify and BigCommerce. They're called Rewind. They're giving 2x eCommerce listeners 30 days trial for each of the trials when you mention 2x eCommerce. We've got the best email marketing software for direct-to-consumer businesses sponsoring us. And we recently just got Bolt checkout. So if you're not running Shopify, if you're running BigCommerce and many other e-commerce platforms, and you really want to rev up your bottom of funnel checkout process, you have to check out Bolt Checkout. They're a sponsor to this podcast. And I think if you go to bolt.com/2x, you get you get an offer there that they'll reach out to you and do you a really, really good deal. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to let this reel roll and enjoy this episode. Grab your notes. This is going to be a big note-taking one, and see you at the end of the show. Peace. Hi guys, welcome to the 2x e-commerce podcast show, and this is the podcast dedicated to rapid growth in online retail. I don't think I've been more excited about an episode because this is a part 2, right? And anytime I bring a guest the second time, that guest is truly special. Now, if you rewind back to the 18th of July, yes, I did record it. I do have records for this. 18th of July, 2018, we published Own E-commerce for Q4 with Facebook advertising with Depesh Mandalia. Depesh is back here to talk about, now this is May, so we're looking at almost 2 years on. A lot has changed in the world of Facebook advertising, and he's here to talk about everything that's changed. Now, for those of you living on the rock and don't know about Depesh, I'm going to just give you an overview. Now, Depesh is pretty much 3 things. He's an entrepreneur, an investor, and a Facebook advertising chef. He'll explain what he means by chef later on. But he has been able to leverage digital advertising predominantly via Facebook through his agency called ZASR, that's Z-A-S-R Digital, and has been responsible for over $100 million in revenue from about $20 million in spend from one platform, which is the Facebook advertising platform. He's an advisor to Facebook, and he's just an all-out ninja when it comes to Facebook. I mentioned every time I get someone on here to talk about Facebook, his name somehow creeps, into the conversation because of the amount of value he's added to this space in general. So, yeah, I'm not going to waste too much. I'm just going to introduce Depesh. Welcome to the show, Depesh.
Thank you. Privileged to be back. And
before we kick off today's show, I'd like to give a quick shout out to our sponsors. Did you know that cloud-hosted e-commerce platforms like Shopify and BigCommerce do not provide automatic backups? Rewind steps in to protect Shopify and BigCommerce stores with automatic backups. Rewind is trusted by over 25,000 stores. Install Rewind and get to test it for free over 7 days. And to extend the 7-day trial to 30 days, head over to rewind.io, their website, and mention 2x eCommerce.
For the record, it's the third time we're actually speaking, because if you recall, I think in 2015 we actually had a podcast.
Yes. So the third time. So you're a record setter, because I've never had anybody third time on. But it's so crazy because the evolution, your evolution is amazing. I was on your site, Depesh, your personal site. Let me get back on there. And I love the way you talked about the fact that, you had your formative years, career years, transformational years, Facebook years, and then agency years. And then these are like the mission-driven years. Do you want to sort of take us through that? Just summarize that page, because that no one does that. And, that to give people context about the amount of time you've dedicated to marketing and Facebook, to where you are today, essentially.
Absolutely. So I wanted to write an About Us page, or About Me page, which kind of reflected my journey, because a lot of people will go to my personal website to say, right, who's this guy? So they'll either go to LinkedIn or to my personal website. And the fact is, from the very start, I stumbled forward. So I was a developer. I stumbled into project management. From project management, fortunately, I stumbled into e-commerce, and without these unintentional kind of crossroads, I wouldn't be here. So I would have still been maybe in development, who knows? But in 2005, when I was a project manager and I saw this role to be a website project manager, I thought that's right up my road, because I know websites, I know project management. The role was actually to be for what is now called the conversion rate expert. So to manage the website and everything within it, but to really drive sales. And back in 2005, conversion rate optimization or CRO or anything like that, it wasn't really a thing. So my role was seen as someone who's technical, who could look after the analytics, who could create landing pages, who could run focus groups and stuff like that. And then from that point, that helped me stumble into SEO, because managing a website also meant that I need to make sure it was also SEO friendly. And then from there was my journey into marketing. And that kind of helped me to form everything I have now by literally just keep stumbling forward. Just these opportunities kept opening up. So, from SEO, I fell into paid search. And then from paid search, I fell into affiliate marketing. And it just all kind of blossomed like that. It's a completely unintentional path. There was no way I could foresee that I would be into e-commerce and online sales and things like that. And then in 2009, I actually lost my job. It was recession in the UK and global, in fact. And then from that, I stumbled into running my own affiliate offers. And actually around 2012, after we'd been quite successful, we lost our organic traffic. So Google made a big change in 2012. And from there, I stumbled into Facebook ads. And I look at some of these things over the years, and I think when I wrote that, it was a chance for me to actually reflect back on these stages of my life from a kind of work or kind of personal development perspective of how these things, these stumbling blocks actually created everything I have right now. So without failing with my affiliate marketing business that was growing, but we lost our traffic, I would not have looked for a paid traffic source to try and pick up those sales faster. I wouldn't have entered Facebook ads. And without doing that, look at the Lost My Name case study, that wouldn't have happened. Like, who knows? Maybe that company wouldn't have grown. Like, it's just, I find it fascinating to think that looking at Lost My Name, for example, all those stumbling blocks I had before, what if I didn't have them? What if one block was missing? What if I never joined Lost My Name at the stage of them being in Old Street with 10 freelancers all kind of hacking this thing together to becoming what it was? And then from there, everything else fell in place. So the amazing success at Lost My Name got the attention of Facebook. I got flown out to Menlo Park. I got involved with panels and talking and things like that. And then it was a chance conversation with someone quite senior. And he was like, you're doing a good job of working with one company at a time with Facebook ads. We need more people like you in the UK that understand Facebook, but can work with many people. Have you not considered doing an agency? Never in my mind would I've ever thought of running an agency because it just didn't appeal to me. It wasn't my thing. I really enjoyed being hands-on, working on projects, but I did it anyway. And with Facebook's backing, we started SM Commerce with a goal of replicating that one-to-one success with many companies, and that then grew into a kind of, I guess, a sought-after company. We're a small business. We're not a huge agency, and we've kept it that way intentionally. But from that, creating the kind of processes around how to do media buying and how to implement our strategies, we then started to write the SOPs and the guides and everything like that. And then from there in 2018, it became an internal training course. And then I decided to publish that externally. And that became a whole new thing, which was from there came my community, speaking events, and all this whole new world of essentially working in the info product space. So I'm selling training, starting to do physical masterminds or in-person masterminds, coaching and everything else beyond that. But like, if I look back at 2017, when we started the agency, again, I would never have seen myself as a public figure. I'm happy working behind the desk, behind the scenes, as I had done right prior to that. I've worked with the likes of Seed Camp and Techstars in London, working with startups. And I've done all of that behind the scenes, helping companies, consulting for companies. But I enjoyed the kind of privacy and the kind of closed nature of that. If someone had said to me at that point, you should go and become a global thought leader on XYZ, Facebook or whatever it is, I would have said that's not my thing because I'm quite shy, I'm quite reserved. It's not really something I'm interested in. But these things stumbled into becoming something. And in fact, in 2018, when I created the training course, around kind of towards the end of summer, I kind of lost interest in it. So I was like, I've done it for 6 months with driven sales. It just feels like a hollow experience because you create this online program and then people are buying it and yes, sales come through. But I enjoy the transformation. So when you're working on an e-com store, for example, and you see it go from, like Lost My Name, 800K to $26.5 million.
Incredible.
It's so adrenaline pumping. I really enjoy that. When I was selling digital courses, yes, I can make money out of it, but I wasn't really enjoying anything else beyond that. So I decided to park it. Then one guy reached out and just coincidentally around kind of September 2018, and he was like, he messaged me on Messenger. And he said something like, if your course wasn't around when it was, and he joined as one of the early members, my business wouldn't be here right now, and I'd have to go and find a 9-to-5. And suddenly something switched, and I thought, I'm not just selling courses online. I'm actually in a position where I can change people's lives. And that changed everything for me. It was all of a sudden like working with companies at the agency, we can do that because we're managing their ad accounts, we're helping them and things like that. And we can see significant growth in their businesses. But now students were reaching out to me and saying, your course is transforming our business. And that kind of created a new path, which was, I want to do that. I want to create these transformations. And that's kind of what led into everything we've got right now.
That's incredible. That's incredible. For those of you that don't know the Lost My Name story, Depesh came back in, I think it was 2015, and you were pretty much leading marketing out in Lost My Name. They were like a personalized book, they're a personalized book product, and you used Facebook to take them from 0 to $26 million in revenue in what, 9 months? Was it?
So when I joined, they were already making money, but primarily through affiliates. So for example, at the time, their biggest income was through not on the high street. So they were selling through resellers. They knew they had a good product, but they couldn't sell it directly. So they tried Facebook ads, paid search, lots of different platforms. So by the time I joined, I think they'd done maybe 600 to 800K or somewhere. No, they'd done a few 100K. In the first year, we took them to 8 million. So from 800K to 8 million in 2014. And then in 2015, up from 8 million to 26.5 million. So in 18 months, we'd gone from 800K to 26.5 million. And one thing I want listeners to understand is you cannot do that with just Facebook ads alone. Like, this is just something really important to realize is, although Facebook drove the majority of their traffic and sales and awareness and everything alongside that, we had to grow the tech team, the customer service team. We had a dedicated conversion rate optimization team, developers, designers, and there's a whole ecosystem that grows alongside this to the extent that when I joined that company, we were about 10 people just jamming it out in a hired space in Old Street, to when I left, there were over 100 people in a dedicated space that Lost My Name not only owned, but they'd fully internally designed into exactly what they wanted it to be. We had VC raising as well from Google Ventures and A16, then if anyone knows them, and then different kind of investors coming in to help take those take the product worldwide, essentially.
Incredible. Okay, so I love the impact. So one thing I have to just say is you're a genius at storytelling, and you moving from working behind the scenes to becoming a public figure has not just necessarily, this is a personal observation, so it's anecdotal, has not only been your skill set, but the ability to inspire people with the stories you tell. You've been able to merge the emotive, and this, if anybody is listening to it to this point, you'd notice how genuine and how emotive Depesh has been, and his results speak for themselves. So you managed to merge it, and that's just skyrocketed you through the ecosystem and with the attention as well as your results. So coming down to that with what I just said, first of all, do you agree, or am I just making stuff up?
Yeah, I think I've learned that. I think I've learned through advertising, through marketing, that storytelling is where it's at. No matter what kind of product you're selling, it's all about getting across the feeling. So like when I talk about marketing, for example, people want to feel something. It doesn't matter if you're selling a $20 product or $2,000. If they don't feel something, they're less likely to interact, whether it's clicking the ad or buying again or anything like that. So people buy on emotions. And I since a kid, I used to love writing stories, just kind of fictional and things like that. And I was fascinated by the world of fiction and the way you could create a picture in people's minds. And that's something which through my marketing, I've learned to develop and hone over the last 10, 15 years, especially in copywriting as well. So I first started kind of learning copywriting back with like Copy Blogger and the guys like 10 years ago, also learning from the likes of Ogilvy and trying to understand how to convince and convert. Then as over the last 2 years, I became more public, I've had to learn how to do that verbally as well, because I would say my biggest strength is in writing. I love writing. If there's one job I could do, I just love to be a writer. So copywriter, sales writer, all that kind of stuff. I really, really enjoy that. Some people, for example, are great telling oral stories and narration and things like that. And they enjoy the kind of building up of the atmosphere. Me being a kind of quiet, shy, reserved type, it just wasn't my thing. Now, in 2018, I was actually invited to Affiliate World Asia to speak on stage, 500,000 affiliate marketers or whatever it was. That for me is not my safe space. That's way outside my zone of genius. But then I said at the time, right, if I'm going to take this public thing seriously, I'm going to train up on it. And I hired a coach to help me get better at speaking, essentially storytelling, and be able to deliver it from stage. And, she was a TEDx coach as well. And I went through an intensive program over 6 weeks that got me in the position and the shape to go out onto that stage and absolutely nail it. And actually at that talk, I did 2 talks a few days apart. The first talk, I was voted the 3rd best speaker of, I think, 15, and the second talk, joint best. Now, if you rewind to 2016, I did a talk in Edinburgh and I was voted the worst speaker. And that's a transformation over a period of two years by consciously recognizing my gaps in what I need to work on, hiring a really good coach and intensively working on it. And the thing is that you can apply that to anything. If you're media buying on Facebook, if you're learning to fly an airplane, you want to become a NASA scientist or whatever it is, you put the effort in, you learn it, and you can literally become a master of any skill if you've got that desire to do so and you've got the time to put into it. And that's exactly what I did with the speaking. And now I'm quite comfortable going on stage. I don't really care how many people there are, if it's 100 people, 10 people, or 1,000. I've learned the techniques to deliver that. I'm like, for example, 3 years ago, I would not have dreamt on jumping on a Facebook Live and just talking. Whereas now it's a lot more natural for me because I'm so much more confident. I've been through the training, I've developed it, and therefore my approach is a lot more natural than it was ever before.
Incredible, incredible. Would you advise people to read fiction books? With the hustle culture and entrepreneurship, it's all about, what non-fiction books are you reading, what self-development books are you reading? Would you, given the fact that you enjoy non-fiction and, storytelling is a big factor in non-fiction, what's your suggestion there to entrepreneurs?
I tell you what, it's not the entrepreneurs, but it's their children. Because what I find is, as a child, if you don't harness your creativity, it either disappears or it just gets compressed. And I think that's the responsibility of a parent. I have it right now. My kids want to watch TV all day. They want to play computer games, but the creativity isn't there because the screen is doing all the hard work for them. But like, for example, my eldest son, he was really into Tolkien. He went through the whole Lord of the Rings series. He read, I think, all 3 books or whatever it is within like 2 days. And he was just so enthralled by it. I had the same feeling when I went and read the Lord of the Rings books many, many years ago, many decades ago. I went through the same thing because I just wanted to read every page and I could see these dragons and monsters and everything in my mind. That, as an adult, if you've not done that before, it's hard to get back. So if you're an entrepreneur, for example, and you want to get that creativity going, it's really hard. But as a child, children are naturally creative. They want to play, they want to create, they want to explore and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's where it comes from. So I think the responsibility for the entrepreneur is, obviously, if you can do it, be a bit more creative. But it starts in childhood and really starts between the age of like 2 and 10, of really getting them into the mindset of thinking for themselves, problem solving, but seeing opportunity and creativity and things like that. And I think that helped as well. And, going back to my childhood, for example, we were quite poor, so we didn't have all the gadgets and games and stuff. So we'd have to be quite creative in coming up with games. And, I would read, we couldn't go cinema, so I would just read all the time. And so my creativity, I think, developed in a different way to others that had all the latest computer games, that would always go to the movies and things like that. And I think that's something which it has to evolve over time, and it's harder as you kind of become an adult to try and unlock that creativity again.
It's super interesting. My son, sort of channels his love for cartoons to animation, and we as parents just have to facilitate that flair and passion to see how far it can blossom.
Exactly.
Really. Okay, interesting. Very, very, very interesting. Thank you for that. Okay, let's talk about brand-driven performance marketing, which is your BPM method. Now, back in 2018, you had the course. You said there were like SOPs for the agency, which were pretty much repurposed as into a course. Now, what I love about what you're doing is the fact that if I'm a startup entrepreneur and I wanted to work with Zaz and I just didn't have the resources as yet to scale my Facebook ad because I can't afford you. You still have these courses, the BPM course to be particular, to help me. It's a 2K course, it's $2,000, which is about £1,500, that will pretty much teach me how you do it as an agency.
Yeah.
Not only that, if I can't afford like $2,000, you have the CBO cookbook, which I think you released last year.
That's right.
I have had up to five private messages, as in from people saying, have I checked out Depesh's, cookbook book, either reviews or my opinion about the book. So it's certainly reached thousands. You sold thousands of that book, amazingly. It's a low ticket book. I think it's under $200.
Right.
Not very sure. So you're catering to every single step in the mass market.
Absolutely.
It's almost like with your courses. If I'm not at the stage where I'm spending, what's the threshold for spending 30K a month? So in order for you to get like a Facebook ad rep or account manager, you need to spend about $1,000 a month a day. So if I've not really reached that stage where I'm spending with Facebook and I don't have an account rep, your material just replaces that Facebook rep. Now, we released BPM back in 2018. Now we're in 2020. a lot has changed. I was on the landing page. I had access to BPM one. What are the changes? What has changed? What are the significant things that have changed from Facebook of 2018 to 2020?
Absolutely. So just before that, I'll touch on the point about the kind of agency versus other material. And actually what I realized is, and we went through this late last year to realize that we have this kind of invisible ladder that we didn't even know we had. So even below that $200 course, I have my community. There's like 14,000 people in there. Yeah. And that's organically just developed, where I'm training people up to become better with their media buying and understanding of Facebook. That is actually the bridge between me and Facebook. So I get a lot of info and insights from Facebook. I share it all there. So, a lot of people want us to know what Facebook are doing, what the latest insights are, etc. So that's what the community is about. And then like the cookbook just came about because Facebook developed a new product and we wanted to make sure that we gave all of our learnings to people. And then we've got the training program and the agency stuff. And then we realized there's actually a ladder here. And not only is the ladder there, people are consciously moving through that. And because of that, we took the training program that I developed in 2018 and I literally tore it apart and started again because, like I said, we went from here are our agency SOPs, let's turn that into a course. And back in 2018, we called it the Facebook Ads Playbook because it was essentially my agency's playbook. In 2019, we started to develop it and put some kind of more theming around it to call it the BPM method to get people to understand that this isn't just performance marketing. It's the core of how to become a great brand marketer and apply that to performance marketing. So that's what it's all about. But late last year, I reviewed the whole program and I said, how do I get it to a point that if I was to start this from scratch, not here's my agency's SOPs, maybe you'd like it. It's, I want you to have success from this. What does that look like? I hired a program director who actually worked with ClickFunnels and Russell Bronson, who's helped Russell to come up with the programs and kind of things that he's got. And we kind of looked at it and she gave me her feedback of kind of reviewing what's good and what's bad about the current program, looking at all the student feedback, the wins, the challenges, and we actually created a new plan for that to execute right now. And that's exactly what the program is right now. So, for example, when you have a look at it, you'll see that I think probably 90 to 95% of the material is actually rewritten. So it's taking the approach of originally it was based on me writing it for my media buyers to now me writing it for students. And although it might not sound like a big change, it is, because now there's a lot of assumptions that my media buyers have access to me, my team, and we have lots of documentation and things like that. I've actually now included that in the new program. So there's lots of more downloads and worksheets and things like that, which we already had in the agency. But you don't know what you don't know until you start to get that feedback. So with the original program, I didn't know how people would react. I didn't know if anyone would be interested, what would happen, etc. We took all of that, revamped it, and created a new structure. So actually, for example, I had feedback from someone on the weekend that saw the launch, and he said something like, it's genius to include modules on funnel and conversion rate optimization, AOV and LTV. And this is my point, that Facebook media buying isn't about how to be, a ninja at like lookalikes and interests and segmenting your audiences and hacking your manual bid and stuff like that. It's about being clever about your marketing. So, for example, we took a client on. They were selling LED lights. Those LED lights retailed for like $40, $50, but we were in a competitive niche. There were many other people selling LED lights as well. We were struggling to get above 100% ROAS. So $40 to $50 ticket value, $40, $50 CPA. Now, you can take two routes as a media buyer. Route number one is, I want to get my costs down. So then you start optimizing your conversion rate and your CPMs and CTRs and stuff like that. We went the other way, which is get the AOV up. And we actually got the AOV up to $80 to $90 and maintained the CPA where it was. Now, all of a sudden, considering cost of goods and stuff, we're actually a lot more profitable and we can start scaling it. And they're the kind of decision points that I think a lot of media buyers forget or miss out on or not aware of. That it's not just about getting your costs up. It's about getting your average order value up, getting your lifetime value up.
So this is a combination of business optimization, conversion rate optimization, business optimization, and media buying. Absolutely. Where, if you have constraints in the media buying side, you look at other ways to make media buying work for you, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, this comes through being on many different sides of the business and wearing many hats apart from a media buyer. So I've been in the position of marketing director, where I've been working across many channels and budgets and big teams, to being a media buyer and everything in between that. So that when I'm looking at things, I'm looking at it from a holistic point of view, which is what's best for my business, not what's best for my Facebook advertising, what's best for the business, which is not always the highest ROAS you can get on the first sale. And you know, it's that's something where people share a lot of screen porn in groups, and they're like 50,000% ROAS, or you know, I scaled to 1 million in 30 days and stuff like that. I've spoken to a lot of e-com drop shippers, print on demand business owners and stuff like that. They're doing 100K a month, and you know, people would say, I'd love to also be doing 100K a month. What's the profitability? And they're like, we're not profitable, we're struggling, I don't know what to do. I take many coaching calls, and you know, people are trying to find out, how do I make this thing profitable? I have a 7-figure a year business, but my take home is, you know, 5K a month. Like 5K a month is a job. That's not a thriving business where you can go and take holidays and stuff like that. You can get a job that gives you 5K a month. You don't need a 7-figure business to do that. So like that's, I think, the big gap in the industry, where people are not understanding that it's not the vanity metrics that are going to give you the life you want. It's what's happening below that.
And a lot of the guys who are doing it at that level are keeping quiet. They're just, you know, they're hushing it up. The question I had was in regards to this problem with attribution. And, you know, when I talked about like business optimization bits of things, I'm also talking about like a profitable CPA, you know, from a marketing standpoint. You know, so my question to you now, I always have long-winded questions, but this question is more around like, how do you sort of say you're advertising in multiple channels, you're experimenting on TikTok, you're working on, you know, AdWords, you're working on Snapchat, for instance, and YouTube ads and Facebook, and you see Facebook is taking maybe 60% or 70% of ad spend, and then the rest of it is distributed to one way, shape of the form or form the other. How do you sort of determine what portions to allocate to each channel being, you know, profitable? You know, do you ask each expert that's managing those other platforms, or would you make that decision holistically if you were, you know, your own, if you're running your own e-commerce brand, or if you're a marketing manager at an e-commerce brand? It's really resource allocation. My question is all about from a spend standpoint.
Absolutely. So if I give you the example at Lost My Name, so obviously we grew business significantly through Facebook ads, but like any responsible business owner, we're looking at diversifying our traffic sources. So we picked up Google ads, we were doing affiliate marketing, partnerships, and then we introduced TV and a few other bits like PR as well. When it came to experimenting with channels, what I convinced the owners to do is to give us budget to experiment without an expectation of return. So for example, my question was, how much can we spend a month where we can just experiment? And if we make losses, we make losses, but it's focused on learnings. So when we created a separated budget just for testing, so we would test that on Pinterest, we'd test that on, I think we're doing Twitter ads and a few other things at the time, with a person in the team who was dedicated to just experimenting. They had no ROAS goals, they had no CPA goals. It was literally just maximize your outcome, your insights from it.
Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. Clearview is a growth marketing platform that powers over 25,000 online businesses. Clearview understands every single customer interaction and empowers brands to create more personalized marketing moments. Listen, analyze, and act on your customer data with Clearview. Visit clearview.com/2x.
From that, and bear in mind, this is 2015, we were one of the beta users of Pinterest ads. We got Pinterest ads up to about £3,000 to £4,000 a day spend. This is 2015.
Okay.
And I think the ROAS was like 1.5 or something. So compared to Facebook, which was like 3 ROAS, it wasn't as good. However, what we saw was that Pinterest traffic was contributing in other parts of the business as well. So retargeting for Facebook and stuff like that. And that was after probably about 4 to 6 weeks of testing with Pinterest to figure out what it was. And bear in mind, back then, there was no documentation or any kind of expertise out there on Pinterest. So we were learning it ourselves and working with a Pinterest rep at the time. And that's where I think, depending on where your scale is, and by this point, we're doing 8 figures, we were using a budget and resource to just test and play. And it's the same way that in 2014, I found profitability with Facebook at Lost My Name. Is I was given budget, 5K, I think it was actually 5K a month. Like, that's not a lot, but we were given that budget to play with paid channels. And it's through that I found profitability with Facebook. Had I gone into that and the owners had said, here's 5K a month and here's your minimum ROAS target, I would have made some very different decisions, because I wouldn't have the flexibility to test and learn and lose and things like that. And that's the hardest thing as an agency owner, to work with clients that are not prepared to do that. I'll give you an example. I run my own e-com stores for testing purposes. I give my team a budget and I say, here's your test budget. Go and test the different niches out. If you find a winning product, then fine, we'll go and scale that out. But here's your test budget. Whatever it is, I don't expect a return from that, but it's your budget, it's your experimentation to see if we can find new opportunities. We actually ran a test last week, which was on a jewelry item. Now, we'd seen some traction from it, but we weren't getting a positive ROAS. Initially, the conversation was the same thing. Should we get the AOV up? But then I said, why don't we actually price test it? So this is a $50 jewelry piece. We price tested it $30, $40, and $50, because I wanted to see what the difference was on conversion rate and therefore return on ad spend.
Did you price test it with like a CRO tool or?
No, we used Facebook split test, and we created 3 separate products on Shopify. And what we did was we ran our best audience and just our best creative. So we wanted to fix as many variables as possible, run it for a week with, I can't remember what the budget, $300-400 or whatever it was. And what came out was really fascinating, because the winning product based on ROAS was the mid-range one. So I think it was like $40. However, the conversion rate was highest on the $30 product. And what we're now going to start testing with is, okay, if conversion rate's higher on the cheaper products, and obviously ROAS is lower because the order value is such, what happens if we start adding upsells into that journey? So with that higher conversion rate, will the upsells actually generate a more positive ROAS? And they're the kind of steps that we take to understand how to enhance Facebook media buying. So as an agency, for example, everything we apply on our accounts is based on what we've done ourselves. And I think that helps us to differentiate from other agencies that are tied, because you can't do that with your client's spend, because it's harder to convince a client to say, we want to do this testing and, give us $500 or $1,000. We want to just burn it and see what happens, kind of thing, essentially. But when it's my own money, then I can make that call and say, I'm happy to put that budget aside. Let's just run this experiment and see what happens. I think it was late 2018. In fact, we did a test. Was it 20? Yeah, I think it was 2018. We did a test to actually test different CPMs on different pixel events and things like that. That then became a core part of our graduation testing process in the BPM method. It was just something that just came to me of, let's just run this and see if that impacts the pixel optimization, and does that make an impact on our testing, and how does that flow into our optimization and scaling? It was just an idea. We went and run it. It actually worked, and that now has become a core part of our work on testing and optimization. We wouldn't have been able to do that on a client account. So I think it doesn't matter if you're an e-commerce owner, you're an affiliate marketer, you're an agency owner, a freelancer. If you're not running your own ad accounts in whatever niche you're in, outside of your core. So even if you're an e-com store owner and you're selling dog related memorabilia or whatever it is, you should always be experimenting on the side. Always have a budget where you're just going a bit left field and thinking differently about how you can enhance conversion rate, AOV, LTV, because often without the shackles of trying to get good CPA and ROAS, you'll find yourself experimenting with far more freedom and potentially create better results as well.
Incredible. So this sounds to me like a mindset thing, like a lean mindset where you fail fast, you learn quickly, pick it up. I mean, your point about how they give you a test budget for Facebook. and how you discovered it with no constraints is, it's interesting. Very, very, very interesting. It's a massive takeaway. Okay. Let's talk about, campaign structure, shall we say? Has anything changed in 2018, where you're talking about cold, warm, hot? What has anything changed so far in the past 2 years in Facebook and in your campaign structure? So how you have
So that's the same campaign structure I've used since 2015. And I remember I was in Menlo Park and Facebook were asking, like, because part of going out to Menlo Park was presenting our success for Lost My Name. Part of it was meeting with product engineers and product managers to talk about the things we were doing and what we were seeing working and getting their feedback. And I talked about our funnel and the fact that we have different parts of the funnel, and we segment and we retarget and we funnel people through different ads and messages. At that time, it wasn't really the normal thing to do. And even the Facebook reps at the time didn't really have so much material or knowledge on that. I'd like to claim and say that I was the one that suggested that Facebook should implement this. And since 2015 onwards, now Facebook do have a similar structure where they're talking about top of funnel, middle, and bottom, which everyone talks about. But we were doing it way back before it was kind of more well known. So that remains the same. It's been the same since 2015 that we've been applying it. 2014, we were all over the place. We had multiple campaigns and ads and ad sets, and it was really unstructured until it certain things started to click. So that part of it is still relevant because you want to target the right person at the right time with the right ad. That's what it comes down to with Facebook advertising. And that is how the algorithm works. That's how the auction algorithm works, is Facebook is trying to also do the same thing. If you're browsing your newsfeed, Facebook knows so much about you. For example, it knows on average what time you go and log into Facebook, WhatsApp, Messenger, and Instagram every single day, how frequently you use it, what time you spent on different apps, which apps you use to click ads. Like, for example, you may never click ads on Messenger. It has so much about you, so that when it comes to figuring out, right, I need to target this user with an ad, it will then go and find ads that will match from different advertisers. So, for example, you might click on certain kinds of apparel or accessories or something like that. Facebook knows that already. So then this advertiser comes on board and says, I'm going to target this profile. You meet that profile. Now the question is, will I serve this ad from this advertiser to this person? Now you might, for example, have already bought online. Facebook knows you're a purchaser, all those kind of things. So all these markers are already set. The goal for the advertiser is, I want my ad to be shown to this person because they're likely to buy. They meet my profile, age, gender, demographics, whatever it is. The problem that occurs is when you're not working in sync with Facebook and trying to do the same thing, that's where you get instability and you can't scale and things like that. And what I mean by that is that funnel structure completely supports what Facebook's trying to do. So top of funnel, mid of funnel, bottom of funnel, which we call cold, warm, hot. We know something about you. So my middle of funnel is people that have engaged but not clicked. So they've engaged with my page, with a video, for example, or something like that. So I know they know me already, or my brand or the product. Therefore, the type of ad I serve is going to be slightly different. When I'm retargeting someone that's visited my site, again, I know something about them. So all these clues and things are there, so that when I'm targeting you now, I know that you've visited my cart page. You've added a couple of products to the cart. I want to now try and get you back based on building the right messaging for you. So what is the reason you haven't checked out? If it's a low-cost ticket item, let's say it's $40, and you've gone all the way to checkout, but you haven't purchased, what is it about that journey that stopped you from transacting? That's my goal as an advertiser to tackle. So, I create an avatar sheet for every persona that I'm trying to target. And it's not just about coming up with ads to entice you into my funnel. It's coming up with responses to potential barriers to bring you back. So, for example, if I've just launched an e-com store and headphones, for example, I'm selling headphones. If you don't know my brand, you're not going to know me, like me, or trust me as a brand. So you may have come through. In fact, I did this journey yesterday. I saw some headphones come up in my newsfeed. I think they're called Neuraloop. Worth checking out. They're quite interesting. Okay. I did exactly this. I went onto their site. I'd never heard of them before, But as I started to read the messaging, I thought this is a really cool product. So for example, I would have gone onto their view content audience, but I haven't checked out. So now I expect that their retargeting ads are going to kick in. Whether they've got the right messaging right will depend on whether they've understood my potential barriers on purchasing. So for example, I went through and I really liked the concept of the product, but I'd never heard of the brand before. I don't know what the quality is like. I don't know what other customers they have. Now, for example, if they have a retargeting ad and they have a musician or some well-known celebrity who's wearing their bands and saying, you know, this is an amazing product, the sound acoustics are so good, I'm probably going to buy it because now you've absolutely bypassed that know, like, trust. I trust you now because you've got this brand endorsement. Yeah. They're the things that shift the needle when it comes to Facebook advertising. Yeah. And it's not the duplicate your ad set 5,000 times and put $1 million bid on your manual bid. You know, I'm exaggerating, but that's where I see so many people focusing rather than what's actually, what's your messaging? What's the funnel look like? What's the landing page experience? What copy do you have? They're the things that make a difference.
So no top of funnel, like mid, trust, bottom. Kind of.
Exactly. Yeah. You're convincing. And, you know, the way I try and pitch it is, imagine you're going out on the street. Go out on the street and go and sell your product to someone who looks like your demographic. See how well you can convert them. In fact, print out your ad, your cold top of funnel ad, and hold it in front of you and go and speak to your prospect. I guarantee you'd never speak to a person like that. Like you see some of these ads and they're like, you know, amazing headphones, limited availability, 50% off, durable, whatever. You would not speak to a person like that. When you've just walked into your showroom or you're trying to sell on the street, you try and build a rapport. You maybe say, hey, have a look at this video. It's really cool. It shows you how this product's used. When you start thinking in that kind of mindset, you'll look back at your ads and realize, yeah, actually, I think I could probably tweak and improve my ads. Okay.
I'm going to go a bit technical here in terms of like your audience filtering. So you have your top of funnel, which would be interest, demographic, you know, what have you. How do you really whittle down mid-funnel audiences so you could channel your messages, you know, quite specifically to those, segments of customers or potential customers or audiences?
Absolutely. So, for example, let's say we're retargeting video viewers. What kind of videos have they seen top of funnel? So you could have some very different angles in your video where one angle is talking about, it could just literally be user-generated content around your product or people using it. Therefore, if you know that they've watched, let's say 50% of that video, but they haven't clicked, go back and look at that first portion of your video and figure out what have they actually taken away by that point and what have they missed? Because, for example, if the payload of your video was, 75, 80% in, that means they haven't really seen the payload. One of the things that Facebook recommend, which I also vouch for, is if you look at TV advertising, there's a peak. And then at the end of the TV ad is the payload, which is like the big reveal or the product. You turn that around for Facebook ads. So the big payload and impact has to be earlier on so that within the first few seconds, someone knows whether this ad's relevant or not for them, and then you kind of build them back in. If you haven't got that through, then it's harder to remarket to them, knowing that they know enough about your product and brand. So if I'm remarketing to those people, I might come up with something that continues that journey, or it might just be testimonial ads or a bit more about the functionality or something like that.
What about video durations for top of funnel? What are you seeing working really well now on Facebook?
I would say ideally anything around kind of 30 to 2 minute mark, but it depends on what kind of AOV you're pushing. So for example, I'll give you an example. When I've been running video ads for, in fact, we did this experiment, I think it was 2019, I think early 2019. I actually ran video interviews as cold ads. So this is for the BPM method. So I would interview people for an hour on Facebook advertising. It was just purely knowledge, just question. I actually found that the video view length was actually really quite good. So for an hour's long, I think average it was like 15 minutes. So for someone to actually sit there in an ad who doesn't know you, to sit and watch your ad for 15 minutes, it's an ad, right? No one sees it as an ad because it's a value ad. And at the end of it, we would remarket to people that watch 25%, 50%, 75%, etc.
So these were not edited. Sorry for continuing.
No, they weren't edited at all.
Pure. This okay. Oh wow, raw
These
video.
were literally
interviews.
videos that I
Okay.
would shoot live as well. It's not like I would studio it and edit or anything. These were live videos. And this is the thing about doing fast iterative testing. There are many mistakes we made. There's many opportunities to improve. I would literally run a live interview, and then I'd use the same video to test different copy angles in my ads, and literally just run them and see, for broad audiences, 5% lookalikes or people that are interested in e-com or something like that, what the response would be. And I think to this date, they are my most profitable ad campaigns I've run. More profitable than doing lead magnets or anything like that, because I'm delivering that value straight up, and it bypasses the learning curve or the curve of knowing me, liking me, and trusting me. Yeah. And that was one example. Others, we've done shorter videos and trying to prime people in, for example. That really depends on the AOV of the product you're pushing. If you're selling a $20, $30, $40, $50 e-com product, you don't need necessarily such an elongated funnel that's going to really try and convince and convert them through. Whereas now, if you're in the $100 range, you need to maybe consider how many touch points will you need. We have a client right now, for example, where we are selling a $100 AOV product. We know based on the attribution data, whichever ROAS we get on day one, by day 10 or 14, that ROAS is doubled from that first click.
Okay, makes sense.
This is the consideration path. And actually, the cost per add to cart is generally really, really low, like $5 level. But we know on average, people are adding to cart 2 or 3 times. So the unique cost per add to cart is about $20. But off the back of it, and this becomes a measurement and control for us, that when we're looking at analyzing the ads on a daily basis, as long as ROAS is within like 120, 140%, we know we're on track, because more sales will pull through based on the attribution. And that's another point of understanding the consumer journey, that not everyone will see an ad and just buy straight away, and not everyone will go through your funnel in the way you want them to.
So how often do you sort of adjust the attribution window?
So we use Supermetrics. We pull the data through into a Google Sheet. We look at 1 day, 7 day, 28-day conversion windows, and we look at the data which shows us on each of the last 30 days, what the ROAS looked like. And it's a real simple and crude way, I'd say, to get an overall idea across the account of what the attribution looks like. So on some accounts, the ROAS we see on day one is pretty much as good as it will get, because it's a low cost product, people buy there and then. And therefore, when you look at that 7-day, 28-day attribution, there aren't many sales that are seen.
What's your go-to platform for attribution, for reading as accurate as possible attribution reports?
I don't have a preference, because I haven't found one that's good enough to me.
Because analytics seems a bit skewed, and Facebook...
They're all skewed, unfortunately. So I'm actually... so Facebook have a lot of work going into the attribution program right now. So I'm working with them in the attribution team to figure out how best to enable attribution insights. So the platform you see on Facebook, if you click into attribution, it's a bit fiddly, because you need to figure out how to set up a line of business, and it's a bit fiddly to set up. But the idea is that Facebook attribution works at the pixel level, not the ad account. That means that Facebook can see all the other traffic sources as well, like Google Analytics. But like Google Analytics, by default, Facebook looks at last click attribution. And what that means is, if Google's looking at last click and someone came through a Facebook ad, but then they came through an organic search, then Google would attribute the sale to organic search. What Google does well is give you simple breakdowns of the attribution path. So, excuse me. So it's kind of what Google allows you to do is say, right, here's the first touch point, here's the second touch point, here's the third. The problem is, how do you use that in your day-to-day analysis, right? One thing that I find works well is, as long as your UTM tracking is done well, so UTM being like the source, the medium, campaign, etc., then you can at a level understand which campaigns are driving the clicks that are being attributed elsewhere as well. So I think as far as Google Analytics goes, it's probably the closest that I would say is where I would be looking at data reliably. I've also had DoubleClick in the past, which is a lot more expensive, but does a good job as well. More recently, over the last 6 to 8 months, we've been playing around with Wicked Reports. Okay. It's still not there. It's still not as good as we want it to be. And I'm hopeful that Facebook, with its attribution tool, can help give another aspect and another dimension of what's working and kind of what needs optimizing. One of the features that I'm waiting for Facebook to release is being able to attribute within your ad account. So imagine being able to see which top of funnel ad converted at the bottom of your funnel. Yep. So you can see the path that they saw this ad first, then this ad, and then that ad.
An in-campaign attribution model, yeah.
Exactly. That would be hugely empowering, because how many times do you get a top of funnel ad which isn't converting, you switch it off, and then your bottom of the funnel doesn't perform? Because
exactly.
you didn't realize that there was a whole knock-on impact there as well.
Exactly.
So that's really important as well.
Exactly. Okay, let's talk. Speaking of top of funnel, I've had some guests who've come on the show that have alluded to this, which is like work on a super cheap top of funnel traffic source, and that just pays off its dividends when you're doing Facebook. So it's kind of like what you're talking about, where it's the know, like, and trust. So rather than sorting out the know within Facebook, you sort out the know, like for you, for instance, through your community. And through your authority, through going on stage, there's the public figure persona linking you to your one thing, which is Facebook advertising. And so when I see your ad, I already know you, right? Yeah. So it's more or less, what is your offer? And is it relevant to me, at this point in time? And then I make that decision, and I become a customer. So what free top of funnel channels would you suggest in the e-commerce space? There are obviously two categories of e-tailers, or I'm going to just define two categories of e-tailers: fully cataloged e-tailers that have multiple SKUs, 20 plus SKUs. It could go from 20 to 2,000 SKUs, and then you have like either single product, e-commerce funnels, or multi-product e-commerce funnels, not more than 5, that all sort of either could be cross-sold or upsold to each other. Very tight niche, of products. So what would you suggest to e-tailers listening to really build that know bit, that top of funnel bit for the cheap, rather, so to build that massive funnel at the top?
Absolutely. So there are a range. One of the interesting ones I think not enough people take advantage of is finding niche communities that have email lists and subscribers or fans or whatever you want to call it that you can tap into. To give an example, again, from Lost My Name, now for the UK listeners, you may have heard of a company called Bounty in the UK, which is, if you're a parent, you absolutely have. Bounty are a kind of mother-child forum and website where it's all kind of tailored to prenatal and postnatal support for mothers. Now, through a chance conversation, we found out that they have email promotions where they give you sole use of the email in exchange for a fixed CPA on tracked sales. So what that meant, for example, is we could tap into their email database of 1.5 million mums in the UK for a fixed CPA. And at the time, I won't show the exact CPA deals, but the CPA they asked for was half of what we were actually getting on Facebook. And going into it, I was expecting them to come up with a big number, and we'd have to negotiate and stuff like that. But they came up with half of our Facebook CPA. We ran that promotion. It was hugely successful. We saw, in fact, the first time we ran it, it caused site instability because we were just not prepared for the spiking traffic. Mm-hmm. Ran it the second time around, 4 weeks later, had a big impact as well. Now, it's not just about the sales that brought in, but now we can mark them in our database based on the promotion code they used to know that these people specifically came from this partner. So from that, you could do many things. Number one, you can start building a post-purchase campaign to help nurture them and influence them. You can create a custom audience and a lookalike. So you can start testing that kind of data. Mm. And that was just one partner. There are many of these niche and kind of blog or community style businesses out there that can work for a whole range of companies. So that's one where literally for a fixed CPA deal, it's literally free for us, right? Because every time we generate a sale, we give them a commission. It's like affiliate marketing, but with a lot more control. So we wouldn't like go to an affiliate network and say, we'd like to be part of your program. And that network attracts hundreds of different affiliates and they're all fighting against each other. This is partnerships. This is working with brands or bloggers or businesses that align with us as a brand.
Exactly.
That's hugely powerful. And, you know, even if you don't have huge budgets for marketing, it's literally probably one of the lowest cost ways of getting started. Now, bear in mind, by that point, we had some leverage. They knew about us, we knew them, and it was easy to have that negotiation.
So you didn't pay any upfront fees. It was
Nothing at all.
Purely performance. Because they were so confident about their list.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we designed
your
the
product.
email. Yeah, exactly. The product goes a huge way. Like, you can't just jump in and say, I've got this dropship product from AliExpress. Can you sell it? It's not going to work. So you need a product that they can believe in. We had a great looking website. We had some PR. We bundled that up and said, this is our business. This is our product. This is our ideal user. We believe it matches yours. We created the email as well, which they signed off and they vetted and made sure they were comfortable with. So we could control the whole experience. And those kind of partnerships are not only free, but
partnerships are important. You know,
absolutely. So that's one which I don't think enough people either are aware of or tackle. The next question is going to be, how do I find these people? Just start using Google search and start looking for your niche community, your niche plus community or blog or anything like that, and start doing that research and finding. The other obvious one is influencers. So, you know, the thing about influencers is, yes, there's Instagram, there's Pinterest, people have their own blogs, etc. Yeah. It's finding the real influencers is a challenge. And what I mean by that is there's many influencers that have tens or hundreds of thousands of fans and followers, but they're not real engaged users. And you know, there are ways that you can try and identify that. Even a quick glance at their profile will tell you what kind of engagement they're getting. Not just the likes or the hearts, which may be taken away from Instagram, but the comments and the style of comments and how engaged they are. So, for example, for one of the businesses, we ran some influencer campaigns. It was for a different brand, but we're also targeting mothers with children. And we actually went for home interior style influencers that were focused on the parents' niche. And actually that proved really profitable for us because we identified.
Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. Did you know that cloud-hosted e-commerce platforms like Shopify and BigCommerce do not provide automatic backups? Rewind steps in to protect Shopify and BigCommerce stores with automatic backups. Rewind is trusted by over 25,000 stores. Install Rewind and get to test it for free over 7 days. And to extend the 7-day trial to 30 days, head over to rewind.io, their website, and mention 2x eCommerce.
Influencers with big followers, but their niche was parents. So although, like, you'd look at that and say you wouldn't go after home interior because it doesn't link with parents, but these home interior influencers were all about how to get the best for your home when you've got kids. So clever designs and storage and stuff like that. So sometimes you have to think outside of the box when it comes to those influencers.
That's really clever.
Absolutely. And the thing is, these were what you'd call micro influencers. So I have a preference for those rather than large ones because you can have a lot more of them.
I was going to ask you that.
More engaged as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that about like your thoughts on, you know, big influencers or even celebs versus, you know, the army of micro influencers. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, I've had advantages. I've had proposals to work with huge, like, global influencers with different products. Like you may have seen the Kim Kardashian giveaways and stuff like that, which you can buy into.
$1 million or something.
Yeah, I just don't. I think that's not right because you're incentivizing people to follow you. It's like the old school, you know, win an iPad competition for your brand. And like, I remember I was working with a law firm and they're like, I've seen others doing like iPad giveaways. Should we do that? And I'm like, you can do that. You're going to attract people that want an iPad. Doesn't mean they want legal services. Like, you really have to think about what your incentive is and whether it's aligned both to your target customer and also your brand as well.
Exactly. And I remember there's this caption I found in one of these newsletters. I think it's called Lean Locks. Yeah, it's a New York type newsletter around like D2C. And one of the adverts there is like, what's the difference between an influencer and a creator? And influencers just get paid, and creators really care for their creations, and so it sticks essentially.
Absolutely.
And I guess the engagement trickles down. Okay, yeah, some super. Now, your thoughts around Clearview. I don't know whether you use Clearview as a platform or any other email platform that integrates with Facebook audiences.
Yep.
Some of these have like deep integration with Shopify and BigCommerce, all these SaaS-based e-commerce platforms, and they're able to generate like super interesting segments. And when you create those segments, you're also able to sort of sync that up with Facebook. If Facebook emails, are you utilizing some of these to create very specific funnels or very specific messages to mid and bottom funnel audiences?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not a Clearview user myself, but my team use it with clients and kind of through a setup process. And we use it for, pre-sale, so abandoned cart, post-sale and sequences. And then obviously looking at custom audiences. There's another tool that I have used, which is a bit more premium. I can't remember the name exactly, but it was similar to that. And we would, from that, I remember we were working with a client, and we create some amazing cohorts of data from that. So people that had a certain lifetime value that bought certain categories, or people that had come through certain channels, and there's so many ways that you can slice and dice the data. I think that's another part where Facebook media buyers are missing out on so much gold in their back-end data to be able to identify. Like, here's the thing, like when you create a lookalike audience, what Facebook is doing is it takes all of the data in your custom audience, it creates a table, and what it's looking for is trends. And this is the explanation I got from Facebook in 2015 from the engineer at Menlo Park, because I wanted to understand the lookalike data better. And he said, look, when you give us a custom audience, we have data, like could be hundreds of thousands, could be millions of rows that you're giving us. Then we're looking across at all the attributes. So when let's say you upload a custom audience of 1,000 people. So first of all, they're looking at the attributes across that, and then they're trying to match it up to create another a bigger audience, which is your lookalike. So it could be creating a 2 million audience from that. But they're looking for the pattern. What that means is, for example, if you've been running your e-com store for a few years now, you'll know what your lifetime value is. You'll also know, for example, what the customers that have bought more than once, who are your loyal customers, the customers that have bought more recently, that have bought more, certain higher ticket items. When you slice and dice that out and give that data to Facebook, Facebook is looking for what are the attributes of these people. So one thing to understand is when you look at your data and you say, right, high lifetime value, certain categories, etc., what you're sending to Facebook is the names and identifiers of these people. What Facebook then does is does a match on its side and says, we know this about this person. So for example, they've purchased frequently, they visit Facebook frequently, they're mostly on Instagram or Facebook. There's so many things that Facebook know. And he said there's 1 million rows, and he said this is no exaggeration, there are 1 million rows that we can pull back from, and then the machine will look for trends in that data and then give that back to you as a lookalike. Like, it's unbelievably powerful. Yeah. When you've got that lookalike, then that 1 million audience or whatever percentage lookalike you've gone for are not only premium based on your custom audience, but that custom audience is exactly what's defined the people that come back. If you think about it this way, right? If you create a 1% lookalike in the UK, what is that, 400K or something like that?
Yes.
Me and you could create 10 1% lookalikes, and the chances are the same people won't be in the same audiences because there's so many other factors that go into it. So we can have 10 audiences with 400,000 people in there. There's going to be some crossover of who's in there, but my custom audience and your custom audience will dictate who is in there. So, I'll give you an example. One of the most powerful custom audiences I created was pulling out my promoters from an NPS survey. So we sent out, I think we had like 2,500 respondents that had given us a 9 or a 10 in terms of NPS. So for anyone that doesn't know an NPS, it's a kind of satisfaction survey. You can score between 1 and 10. If you score a 9 or 10, you're a promoter. 1 to 6 is a detractor and 7, 8 is passive. So we pulled out the 2,500 people that had given us a 9 or 10 to say, I would recommend this business to my friends and family. They are super happy with the product. So they're purchasers. They're also happy purchasers. We ran that as a custom audience and lookalike, and that was, at the time, our most profitable audience we ran. And that's the power of creating a really good cohort to push into Facebook. One of the others we ran was actually using, I think it was Experian or something else data, where we actually enriched what we had from our customer database. We paid a consultant, he bought some data, merged it into what we had. And again, we created a lookalike from that. And the possibilities are quite endless. But what I would say on the flip side is that was back in, 2017, 2018. The Facebook pixel and broad audiences are, I think, far more powerful now. Mm-hmm. And actually, I heard something last week which really polarized it for me, which was when people look at lookalike audiences, they look at, you need a custom audience, etc. Your pixel is a custom audience, right? Your pixel's creating custom audiences. So when you go to broad, that pixel's bringing data into your ad account and broad takes from that. So essentially the broad campaigns are a form of a lookalike, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like when you get your mind through that, it makes sense as to why broad campaigns actually work so well.
Yeah. Let's talk about custom audience size and account maturity. So if you're to create I know you just alluded to the fact that interest seemed to be, much more effective than lookalikes. But if you're to create a lookalike, what audience size would you start from? Where's the starting point
for the quality?
For a custom audience that you're about to build, like the MPS one that you use 2,500. What is the number threshold that you think the quality of lookalike data would start to make sense?
So that depends on the quality of the data. So for example, if I've got 1,000 people that have added to cart, the quality of that's going to be lower than 100 people that purchased. So that for me dictates it.
Whoa, okay.
So like, for example, if all I have is 100 purchases, I'm going to push that into my lookalike. If that's all I got, and I'm not scaling fast, the more the better. One thing that Facebook did say is after about 10,000 in your custom audience, it's a negative impact on, or not negative, it's just like it plateaus in terms of the impact. I would say anywhere between 500 to 1,000 people in your custom audience is around the right number. The higher you can go beyond that, the better. So if 2,500, 3,000, 4,000, obviously.
So do you think you're better off also creating lookalike audiences around, like, say you're scaling quite significantly? Do you think you're better off creating lookalike audiences around like 30-day purchase lookalikes, which will be in the lower thousands as against hitting that 10,000 threshold?
Potentially, yes, and that's something to test, because if your product is seasonal, for example, and you're looking at 6 months worth of custom audience data, you're going to get all those kind of bounces of people that are spiking and maybe they only buy once a year versus others that buy 2 or 3. You can be a bit more creative and say, I'm going to create a customer audience data from my back end, which is the last 6 months minus anyone that's bought on a discount or promotion. So there are ways to overcome that as well.
Okay. Is accounts maturity a thing?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the more data your account's picked up, the more stable it will become, because Facebook knows not only who your ideal user is, but if you think about the auction, the other thing they look at is what they call the estimated action rate. So the more conversions that go through your site, the faster it loads, the more confidence Facebook has that if I present your ad in the auction, you're going to give the user a great experience as well. So that all comes through account maturity as well.
Okay, so account maturity is based on transactional data, not the age of your ad account.
I'd say both.
Okay.
Like the thing is, if you've run your ad account for a year, but all you've done is like $5 a day page boosting, then that doesn't really count as much.
It doesn't really count. Okay. Now let's talk about CBO, which is the campaign budget optimized setup. You've written a full ebook on it. It's still now an option from what I gather, from the latest updates I gather. They were meant to sort of mandate it, was it in February this year, and then things have changed. How do you manage your accounts?
Absolutely. So we became fans of CBO around middle of 2018.
Okay.
By the end of 2018, we were just convinced it's like the best thing Facebook had developed. So in 2019, all of our accounts were CBO. And obviously Facebook then made this announcement to say, we're going to make it mandatory. And we're like, well, it doesn't affect us. We carried on. But then we were seeing a lot of questions from our community asking, how does CBO work? How are we able to make it work? In early 2019, we released a case study, the 21X case study of how we took a store and scaled it up. And in that, we shared everything about the CBO. But we still were getting lots and lots of questions. So because Facebook were making it mandatory, what started off was around June 2019, I wanted to create like a one-pager. This was like, this is how CBO works. That one-pager became 3, 4, 5. And then I thought, all right, maybe it could be a lead magnet. Maybe it would be like something we give to the community. And I was actually in Canada at the time. We're on a cruise. So on the cruise, there's no Wi-Fi. Or there is Wi-Fi, but it's really poor. So I had no internet connection. So I just spent more time just writing out thoughts and stuff on the CBO. And then by the end of it, it was like 30, 40 pages long. And I said, this is too big to be a lead magnet. And I remember speaking to the team and kind of communicating back and forth. And we'll talk about, well, should we just make it a $9 lead magnet? Yeah, but it's like 60 pages long now and it has more value and stuff. And I'll be honest, when it comes to pricing my own items, it's difficult for me to do that. So I don't make pricing decisions now. I let the team decide on that. And that became more of a training course itself. Like it was never an intent to turn this into a training course. And I put some feelers out and I said, look, I'm putting this together. Would a training course in written format only be appealing? Because like most people expect video, right? And I sent it to a few people and I'm like, wow, this is like literally step by step, everything you need to do. You should publish this. So that's then what got published. And like the transformations it's had for people that's the thing that's just been so satisfying from it, is people have not only understood how to work with CBO, but how to structure their testing, their optimization and everything properly. And the way the whole BPM method has been set up, it's like CBO was made for it. And I think that's one of the key points that, we've been focusing a lot more with the community is there's now a choice. You can use ABO or CBO. We're purely on CBO because everything we work with focuses on how that structure works, to the extent that we are spending far less time in Ads Manager than before. I'll give you an example.
Sure.
We use tools to automate and write rules and things like that. Back in 2018, when we were like mostly on ABO, we would have a ton of rules to at the ad set level, the ad level, making decisions and media buying and stuff to try and help us to scale up and profit. So all these rules were really quite complex. By the time we got to grips with CBO, if you look at our rules right now, they're almost non-existent because we just let Facebook do its thing. And Facebook is far more intelligent once you've fed in the right ingredients for it. And that's kind of, as we went through writing the CBO cookbook, it became more like, right, it is like baking a cake. If you put right ingredients in and you follow the recipe, it just works. And that's where the idea came from, to turn it into a cookbook. I wanted to be a chef when I was younger. That's a separate story. But that's kind of like, it became literally like when you buy a recipe book, for example, you buy a recipe book, but it doesn't come with videos, right?
Yeah.
You buy a book, it's literally, here's the ingredients, here's the recipes, go and do it. But it works. And that's where the concept of this came about. And again, it just works in a similar way.
And then you could put your own flavor to it and make,
That's
few discoveries off the back of that.
Exactly.
So does this, I know you were a huge proponent to RevealBot.
Right.
Where does that put tools like RevealBot? They seem to have expanded I'm just on their website now. They now support, automation for
That's right.
Snapchat and Google Ads. So where does this whole automation thing, put RevealBot?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think there's still a lot of runway for companies like that. Mm-hmm. But if you look at our ad accounts, we're not using those automations as much because we let Facebook make those bigger decisions. Mm-hmm. Facebook rules for many people is enough as well. Mm-hmm. For us, for example, where we use more of the rules is in our testing phase. So for example, we test for impressions, not spend. So I know a lot of the e-commerce forums, they say, spend $5 if you get this metric, then cut it, or spend $50, get that metric. It doesn't work because one audience could be $10 CPM, one audience could be $50 CPM. And there's a difference between how many people you can reach. So we base it on impressions. And so our testing process, once we plug in our ads and our audiences, we literally use rules to cut ads off and also rules to grade the performance as well. Mm-hmm. So what happens is it becomes like a machine. We push our ads and our audiences into the machine. The machine will run the ads. It will pull the ads at the right point. It will also tell us which ads were successful and which were not. We then run a report and then decide which go into our kind of optimization or scaling campaign.
What's your impression threshold at the testing phase?
Give or take 2,500 to 3,000 impressions. So if we're going after purchase event, then more. And the way I see it is the further away your event is from the click, the more impressions you need. So if we're testing lead gen or registration, then sometimes we get away with 1,000 impressions or 1,500 because it's literally click, lander, register. Whereas a typical e-com journey, there's so many bounces to get to purchase. You need a lot more data to be scientifically stable.
At the testing phase, is it a full funnel or is it top of funnel?
At the testing phase, we're predominantly doing top of funnel.
Okay.
So what we actually do is when we go down to mid and bottom of funnel, we rely less on testing, but more on our avatar and our understanding of the consumer to break down the barriers. And we'll use kind of things like dynamic content, optimized ads to do more kind of almost on the fly testing. Because the problem is your audiences are too small to do extensive testing, whereas top of the funnel is kind of okay.
Yeah, okay. Let's talk about CBO. Just I have one or two more questions around CBO, and then we'll move on to dynamic creatives. It is really the optimal number of ad sets. For those of you who are not really aware of CBO, it pretty much keeps ad spend at the campaign level, essentially, and then you could vary with lots of ad sets. So, how many ad sets, Depesh, are you? Would you say is optimal in an ad that in a campaign that's spending say 500 a day or 1,000 a day? Do the number of ad sets vary on the budget, on the campaign set budget, or is there a pretty optimal set of ad sets that should reside in a campaign?
Yeah, it definitely depends on the budget, because the thing about CBO is because the budget is being managed at the campaign level, you have many more variables below it. For example, the number of ad sets, the segments within those ad sets, so the audiences you're targeting, the age, the demographic, and everything else that comes through it. So there's a lot more decision making that needs to go into that campaign for it to decide where that money goes. For example, if you're spending $50 a day and you have 10 ad sets, that $50 is not going far at all. Like, obviously from your mind, you're thinking $5 per ad set, but it's actually worse than that, because it's not just $5 per ad set. That ad set is targeting potentially multiple placements and ages and genders and devices. So now that $5 is being split by another 10, for example. So you're literally spending 0.5 cent per element to test, which is nothing. So in that case, either your $50 a day campaign with 10 ad sets has to take like 4 weeks to fully test and give you relevant data, or you reduce the number of test elements down, which is you reduce the number of ad sets. So in your example, $500 to $1,000 a day, I think 3 to 5 ad sets is about the right number. Oh. As you go up to like, say, 5,000, 10,000, might expand up to 7 or something like that. But even then, I'm not going too wide, because the more variables you're adding, the more variability to your performance potentially as well.
Interesting. Would you still do the same lookalike 1%, 2%, 3% to 10%, or sometimes some people even do up to 20% in a CBO setup?
No, we split our CBO campaigns by audience size. So generally, and this is just a generalization, we keep our 1 to 3% lookalikes in one campaign, our 4 to 7 in a separate, and then 8 to 10 in a separate. And then if we're doing 20, that'd be a separate. Because what we found is not only the audience size is different, but also the potential quality of the data or the audience is different as well. So we'll find better performance by grouping them together. So 1 to 3% are as close as, or a lot more closer than kind of going further out. The 4 and 7 are fairly close, and then the kind of 8 to 10. And when it comes to managing your budgets and also the style of ads that are running in your ad sets, we found better stability doing it that way. So we started off in the same way. We started to throw interest and lookalikes and many things into one campaign. But we found that spends were fluctuating across ad sets. It was really unstable. So we found stability by trying to manage the quality and the size of the audience better within a campaign.
What about interest clusters? So in your more interest-based CBO campaigns, would you pair up very similar interests and demographic settings in your ad sets, or is it just varied?
No, it's the same. So when we go through the testing phase, my preference is to run interests separately, or at least group them into like similar interests, for example. Then when it comes to like the prospecting or scaling stage, I prefer to group them together where the interest and the ads are the same. So for example, if I'm testing different watch brands alongside different car brands and magazines and things like that, if the ads that people are responding to in those different interests are the same, then I'm happy to group it. But for example, the people responding to the Bentley interest group ads could be different to the ones that are responding to the Rolex interest, for example. Therefore, it doesn't make sense to group it, because it could be that the angles needed and the type of consumer behind those interests are quite different as well.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. What about the challenge of creatives? Actually, before I get into creatives, with CBO campaigns, are brands spending more at the testing phase? Is because that's what it sounds like from your perspective.
I don't know if I can speak for all brands, but certainly the ones we work with, we're getting them to focus a lot more on avatars. So even before you write your first ad or come up with your first creative, it's starting off with really thinking about the emotional hooks for your product or your service, and then also the functional. So the emotional hooks become the kind of angle for the ad. Then you bring in the functionality, whereas I think a lot of e-com brands think about the other way around. So what are the functional benefits and how can I explain that to someone? But no one buys the headphones because of the chrome finish. That's like the icing on the cake. You buy it because of the sound primarily, and then the comfort, and then things like that, and then convenience comes after that. So when I'm trying to think about kind of portraying that in the campaigns we're building, we start off with the avatar. So this person is an entrepreneur, and they.
Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. Clearview is a growth marketing platform that powers over 25,000 online businesses. Clearview understands every single customer interaction and empowers brands to create more personalized marketing moments. Listen, analyze, and act on your customer data with Clearview. Visit clearview.com/2x.
Whatever, they run a podcast. So I'm thinking about you, for example. If you are my avatar, how do I cut an angle that makes sense for you? And that then becomes the ad and the creative that we push through the testing phase, both in the copy and the kind of creative format, sort of the visuals as well, to try and find the right blend for you. So you might be in a lookalike or an interest-based audience. I want to know what resonates with you. And I'll kind of measure that obviously on performance of the data coming back.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, now the CBO, and not everybody is or uses dynamic creative, ads, which is another level of automation under a CBO. So you're automating how Google optimizes what audiences to target in the ad set level, and dynamic creative ads. What's your take on dynamic creative ads? Are you running dynamic creative ads, and at what point of the funnel are you running dynamic creative ads?
Yeah, I'm a fan of them, but we don't run them everywhere. So, for example, some people like to use it for testing. I don't, because of our testing mechanism. So, for example, I want to pause ads at certain impression thresholds. You can't do that with a DCO right now because it's just one ad with multiple variants. So I can't pause it out once I get significant results. Also, it's harder to share post IDs across multiple ads when you're doing a DCO versus. So there's many reasons I prefer not to use it for testing. However, further down the funnel is something I call the infinity retargeting strategy, which is when you have a small audience, let's say it's people that visit the cart in the last 3 days or 5 days. every 3 or 5 days, that audience is refreshing. So first of all, that audience doesn't really need to be touched, because once you've got it up and operational and you've got the right time period, it doesn't need to change. If you combine that with DCO or even DPA, dynamic product ads, it gives you a level of being hands off, because once you've got your creatives on point and you know the barriers and you're able to convert and convince them, you never have to touch that again, really, because let's say every 5 days, that audience is new. So there's no real thing of creative fatigue. You don't have to go and cycle in ads. And also, one of the powerful things about DCO, dynamic content optimization, is Facebook knows that you as a user is more likely to look at videos, or more likely to look at statics or this copy. And they already know that about you. So they'll serve you the right ad for you. And that's something which... if you look at where Facebook is right now, there are more and more ways and more tools to automate a lot of the media buying than there ever has been. So running CBO with DPA, with DCO, with advanced matching and all these things, when you put those all things together, and Facebook released something called Power 5 last year, they are all built to take away the complexities of media buying for the majority, so that you can spend time on your funnel, on your audience, on your ads, on your products, which is absolutely what everything the BPM method was built around. And it's almost like Facebook is starting to realize that now. So, that's making it more easier for us as a company running our own ad accounts, because everything that was created in the BPM method has all just been enhanced.
Brand driven.
Because it's all just like Facebook's intelligence around machine learning is taking away all the decision making that we don't have to worry so much about. And it's almost like they disrupted themselves. The ad team disrupted themselves, kind of like what Shopify has done in the e-commerce space. Back in the days with Magento, where you had to tweak, you had to have a development house in-house to actually build anything substantial. And now everybody's with Shopify. Many brands are with a SaaS based e-commerce platform, and they're just focusing on marketing and driving traffic through to their sites, because a lot of the technicalities have been sorted out, which is phenomenal. This is super. I'm taking too much of your time, so we're going to have to wrap things up very, very soon. In regards to creatives, how are your best? You remember your 21x case study, which was phenomenal, around CBO, and I think it was around a ski accessories company, if I can remember. For them to achieve I think it was like a 10-figure success, for them to have achieved that, kind of get those kind of results. How often did they at that kind of scale, how often did they manage their creatives, change their creatives? How often did they test their creatives? What did it look like on the back end of things from a media buying standpoint? Yeah, so I think we scaled them up to about 20 million, and we probably spent the first 6 to 8 weeks heavily testing creative. So we weren't massively profitable. We didn't really know which ads would work, et cetera, et cetera. And, at that kind of scale, I think we peaked at maybe 30K a day in ad spend. And at that level, we were having to rotate our creatives a bit more frequently. But at the same time, because of CBO and because of the structure and figuring things out, that's the first time I've spent 5 figures a day in ads where I wasn't stressed out. Like, performance was stable. Things were just working all the way through. We started scaling on October and carried it all the way through, way beyond Q4, so into January and February. That's the first time I've done that. So in October so in one quarter, these guys made 20 million. Pretty much, but over 2 quarters. The thing is, it's like, I'd done that before, but it was just so stressful, because like before with ad set level budgets, if you imagine at those kind of spends, 20, 30K a day, you've got multiple ad sets, and now you have to manage budgets across all of them and optimization stuff. It was really stressful. But we'd had with CBO, we had fewer budget decisions to make, right? Because we've got, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 campaigns running that were running at the top of the funnel. And because all the inputs were done properly, we did our testing process, the graduation framework, with the business themselves had an amazing platform. It was Magento. It was fast. It was slick, etc. And they provided amazing creative. So when I look at that case study, for example, I'd argue our job was easier because we were given great content.
So what did their creative library look like?
So I'll give you an example. During our test phase, they actually took some skiers and spent a significant 5-figure sum on shooting loads of video and static content. So they had a creative team that would come up with different angles and shots and things like that. So by the time we hit the testing phase, we had a huge bank of creatives for each of the different products, for lifestyle and product and DR and brand and stuff like that. So we started off.
Sorry, I need to stop you in your tracks there. So you have these guys, creating the creative team, putting together creatives on the one hand, and then you have media buyers thinking about angles, for the creatives. So did the media buyers have just access to the raw creatives on the one hand, and then they briefed the video editors to create videos around the narratives they were looking at, around the angles they were looking at, or was everything already prepared and then just handed over to the media buyers?
So somewhere in between. So it wasn't like everything was perfect for us to run, but we would feed back and say, right, we need this kind of angle, we need this kind of crop, or this clip of this video, we need this taken out. So it's a bit of both, definitely.
Okay. Makes sense. Amazing. Okay, so creatives are super important, and for you to really scale a D2C brand, you need to have that engine and that team to put the creatives together. Fantastic.
And the thing is, as an agency, for example, we have creatives that we supply for clients as well. And what we found is it's not the creatives themselves, it's the angles and the approach that the media buyers create and the creative side of media buying that makes the biggest difference. So for example, we came up with some really interesting Instagram story ads for one of our brands, and it was the concepts that made those ads so well. It wasn't I want to differentiate the difference between having a good designer, because I see a lot of people briefing designers and say, I want this amazing Instagram story ad or whatever it is, and the designer comes back and it's visually nice but it doesn't work. It's because you need to think about it from the whole kind of BPM method is brand driven. So think about the avatar, think about the message that you want, the sequence that you want, and all that kind of stuff. That's where the performance comes from. And then a designer visualizes it and gives you back an amazing
Got it. So you essentially hand them over a plan.
Exactly.
Yeah, and with the avatar and the stories you want to tell in the avatar, exactly. And they translate it visually.
Exactly.
Okay. So what's your take on the ratio between static images and video? How would you sort of utilize them throughout the customer journey within the Facebook ecosystem?
Yes, I'm more of a fan of video because of the reason of remarketing, right? So even sometimes where I've got a static image, I'll turn it into a 10-second video. So at least I can remarket people that have engaged. Here's one little trick that I use, for example, for info products when I've got long form copy, is to use a creative, which is a video, but isn't engaging. And what I mean by that is I want them to play it, but I want to measure their engagement on my long form copy. So for example, if that video is 30 seconds in length and most people go to 10, 15 seconds, for example, I know generally they're dwelling on that copy for 10 to 15 seconds. So a lot of people talk about, should you write short copy? Should you write long copy? Measure it and measure the impact of the performance when you start to remarket to them. But you can also look at the engagement of that ad as well and get an idea of how long people are reading it for as well.
Amazing. Yeah, I think, okay. I wanted to ask you about, this has got to do with campaign spend and scaling. I know I've heard you in the past talk about hacks with an Amex card. I just wanted to use this opportunity to ask you around, spend, and there's the issue of scaling an account, and then just due to your payment methods on there, things are screwed up. You mentioned something about Amex at one time. I can't quite remember. Is it still relevant now? And how would you, when you're scaling an account, how do you sort out payments? On that basis?
Sure. Like we're going through this right now on our own accounts, that you can only have right now a maximum of 3 ad accounts per Amex card. And that obviously makes it limiting for certain scenarios. So we're expanding our cards out. The other thing is thinking about if you want, is thinking about the rewards. So this is absolutely regional. So I know for the US, they have far better rewards than we do in the UK. We use Amex Platinum because I do a lot of traveling. But with COVID, it's quite not as kind of relevant. So we're now putting in place Amex Gold just for the other benefits it offers there. I think we're quite limited in the UK in that respect, but I think it's just finding something that's going to work for your region. There's some countries where there is no kind of concept of benefits for spends and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But what I would do is just make sure when you are scaling, like one of the things I see people trip up on is the frequency of those transactions will increase. So depending on what your billing threshold is, which is different to your account spend limit. So billing threshold is after this much spend, they'll pull it out of your card. If that goes up too fast, your payment provider could block your account for fraud because it just thinks that something's gone wrong. Yeah. So you should alert your payment provider ahead of that and say, look, I'm looking to scale up. The amount of transactions are going to step up. Make sure you've already got good history before that. Same applies for your payment processor on your store, for example. So even just emailing Stripe or PayPal and say, look, we've got a surge of sales that are coming up and I just want to let you know this is happening. Sometimes that's okay as well. I'll give you an example. In 2018, I remember someone reached out and they said, they were selling their info products and they scaled it from literally 0 to 100K in a few days or a week. And Stripe shut them down. Based on that, when we launched the playbook, I let Stripe know that we're launching this product. I don't know what's going to happen, but there might be a spike in sales. And they said, appreciate you letting us know. Since that point forward, I've actually had a really good relationship with Stripe in the UK. And they've been really good to us in return because that's what genuine businesses do. People who are in it for profit and don't care about customers and complain because their ad accounts are banned and their payment processors have been denying them, they're the people that payment providers don't want because they're in it for fast money. That's why these things are built up. So just speak to PayPal, to Stripe, even Shopify or whoever you're working with, and show that you're a genuine business that cares about their customer. And often over communication works better than no communication.
Yeah, Stripe is a brilliant company. They for one of my Stripe accounts, they moved it from the 7-day payout to just 3 days. The UK.
That's pretty cool.
It's been incredible. Okay, Depesh, you've given so much. I fully appreciate this. That I didn't anticipate you giving so much time here, and I'm sure this is going to be another blaster because your episode it got a record in 2018 at the time. So I'm expecting the same this year in terms of downloads and listens. I just have the lightning round to wrap things up. I'm going to ask you about 5-6 questions, and if you could answer them with a single sentence, it'd be brilliant.
Sure.
Ready when you are. Okay.
Yep.
All right. What advice would you give to yourself 5 years ago?
Don't start an agency. It's really stressful.
Are you a morning person?
No.
What's your daily morning routine like?
It's depending on how the kids start. Mine is so variable.
Yeah. What are the 2 things you can't live without?
I think it would be my family and my laptop.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, what book are you currently reading?
I was reading Built to Sell. I think it's called Built to Sell.
Built to Sell. Yeah. And if you could choose a single book or resource that's made the highest impact on how you view building a business and growth, which would it be?
That's interesting. That's a real tough one. I'd probably say one that inspired me it's a book called Bold. I think it's called Think Bold or just Bold. And it's got loads of examples of businesses that thought outside the box and became huge, like Virgin and other companies as well.
Okay. This is a curveball question, the final question for sure. What's been your best mistake to date? By that I mean a setback that's giving you the biggest feedback.
Probably losing my job in 2009, and it resulted in depression, and it was probably one of the most difficult times in my life. But without that, I wouldn't have gone down the entrepreneurial route.
Fantastic. It's been an absolute pleasure, having you on the show, Depesh. For people who want to check out the BPM method and people who want to follow you, please use this opportunity to let people know how to go for it.
Absolutely. So I guess the launchpad is my website, depeshmandalia.com. I lead a Facebook ads community. I'd like to think it's one of the most engaging. It's not the biggest. And we genuinely care about the people there and kind of helping and teaching. bpmmethod.com is the full program. But essentially, I want to bridge that gap between Facebook and advertisers to make sure that we're getting the best out of the platform. So that's, if I can help in any way along those lines, then absolutely reach out.
Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, Depesh. Pleasure.
Thanks for having me again.
Hi guys, I hope you enjoyed the episode today, the interview I had with Depesh. If you're listening to it up to now, then there's no doubt you thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, to grab the offer, the discount to 2x e-commerce, listeners, what you need to do is just go to the show notes, or if you're watching this on YouTube, go to the description, to the link in the link in the description, and just get your 25% off. It's typically $2,000. You could check it on the normal website. It is now $1,600. I don't know how long it's going to last. It's maximum the next 30 days. For the whole of July, it's going to be running. But at the end of July, that's it. So, jump on it. It's a terrific, opportunity. I think they're giving upgrades to existing BPM, students. So you might, if you're already, linked up to the BPM, method training, then, essentially you can upgrade. But if you're looking to get premium, premium level Facebook advertising for you or your team, in your direct to consumer, space, or you're running an agency and you're looking to up your game, you don't have a choice. Just grab this opportunity. And I just wanted to say something now. If you are watching this on YouTube, give this video a thumbs up, and if you are listening to this on iTunes, please leave us a 5-star review. It just pumps us up. It gives us a lot of opportunity for exposure. Until the next show, which I promise you is going to be even more, it's going to blow up. It's even going to be more exciting. It's going to really, really blow your minds out. Again, Facebook advertising. Just stay tuned to this. Subscribe. And I will see you guys next week on the next show. Bye-bye. Peace.